Alright, hello everyone. Oh, that's the wrong thing. Alright. Hey, Gloria. Nice to see you. I was hoping to be a little more prepared than I am, but I am less prepared than I was hoping to, because time got away from me as it seems to keep doing. And I'm realizing I forgot to just do one more thing. So let me talk a little bit about what I want to do, um, and then actually do the thing. Actually, oh goodness, we're gonna boost the music for a second, and then I'm gonna actually control it here probably, and hopefully that achieves the same result, but makes it less weird. Okay. So, apology. Yeah, this is going to be. So this is. I want to just kind of like go through some stuff that I've been thinking about, off and on in between other projects. And of course, my internet is apparently too bad to run both the stream and load Google results. So apologies for the choppy form here, everyone. Okay, let's see. Let me start pulling things up. We'll start talking about it. So I've been trying to think about how do you quantify the strength of a deck. Or quantify is maybe the wrong word, right? It's very common for people in that when we talk about there being a best deck or the the best decks or tier 1, tier 2, whatever. And I've been trying to think about how we can formalize that a little bit more. And I think the honest answer is I still don't have an answer yet. But I feel like there's some tools that people should be aware of, and trying to think about how to handle those. Let me go and see. Does this give me the thing I want? Kind of. If I do this and do this, try to build scenes as I go. Let me know the music. It looks like the music is probably in an okay volume, but I can't tell quite as well. I also suspect I am dropping all of the frames right now, so we're going to be in for an interesting stream. Okay. Now I need to get this in. Okay, great. I've got this, and then does anyone actually? And then I need to go find the Maker's Eye. There we are. Okay. That, and then we're also going to the t.milsignal.games. Okay, and then we will start getting some things going once literally a single one of these pages loads. Okay, so this starts as with almost everything. Someone much smarter than me and putting in more consistent work than me, putting something together. So going into Worlds 2025, Kikai put out an article that I don't have preloaded, and apparently my internet is saying, no thank you, we will not load anything. Talking about, what are we going to do? Let's turn off this. Here. I'll do it in a second. One second. And then I've just shot something, so I'll be right back. Okay. Yeah, okay, sounds good. I will turn the music down a little bit more. All right, it should be fairly quiet now. Yeah, probably that's near inaudible. We'll turn it up just a touch. Yeah, apologies. I'll also move the mic a little more centrally, so we'll attack things in multiple angles at once. Okay, fantastic. Now it seems like maybe things are sorting themselves out. Okay. So okay, I think this is the article I want to talk about. This is maybe not the right article, but I guess the thing. So, what was I thinking about? Runner win rates. There was an update. This is the ban list. I feel like there was an article that was like what you should bring to Worlds 2020. Ooh, dropping some frames again. Was there just not a what to bring to Worlds? Maybe that's what it was. Okay. Okay, so maybe I've been shadowboxing something in my head. Okay, well, let's talk about this because I think this talked about it. So, damage assets. Da, 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 da. I think there's some things. Okay, where's the thing I want to get to? Oh yeah. Okay, this is actually almost exactly what's stuck in my head, which is. Like this, I mean, this statement, I felt like honestly rubbed me such the wrong way, and it's a good statement to make, or like it's not an unreasonable statement to make, but I think it is missing the forest for the trees a little bit in terms of what the data is actually telling us, because the thing that happened, the thing like in the context of the testing team I was in, Sable was like basically the just runaway favorite criminal identity. You could place Moosely Hot and be totally fine, but Sable was considered the just much more consistent deck. But you saw that like Sable's win rate was not that much better. So, or like it was in fact worse. And the Maker's Eye, which is a fantastic tool that apparently loading a new site just drops all of my frames. So if we go back to the 25.8 ban list and we apply this filter, presumably it will take a moment to load. 2,500 games, that sounds about right. This is mostly Continentals, right? Where do we get what we get? This can't be right. What's going on here? So, like, the basic phenomenon was like, oh yeah, say Moosely Hot's win rate was higher than Sable's. And, you know, they're making this, Kikai's making this argument that in cut conversion, Sable doesn't overperform, Moosely Hot is slightly above. I think what I would probably say is these are, A, it's a little bit noisy in terms of the data. And something that bugged me about this was, in general, I felt like Sable was a deck that had a higher skill ceiling. You could play more with it, and good players preferred it. But it was also a deck that you could play poorly and but still felt like fairly straightforward netrunner, and so it was easy enough for people to just grab, right? If I collapse this, is it just taking time to load data? Oh, I just need to be patient because my internet's slow. Okay. Well, there we go, right? So, another thing also is like, hey, we have twice as much data for Sable as Moosely Hot. And so it's like, okay, the argument in 2508 is that Moosely Hot has 52% win rate, Sable has a 51% win rate. I don't think you could, this site saying, yeah, there's not a difference between those, and I think that's probably true. And so coming out and saying, oh, look, if you pull out individual data sets, like, that doesn't, like, it's not as good, Sable is just worse. It's like, well, actually, when you average out based on what they're actually doing, it kind of comes out in the wash. And this might be slightly different slices of data, so you get slightly different actual final results. And so I felt like win rate was not. I feel like win rate is. What's the thing I've been trying to think about? Okay, so in regular games or in other games with everyone bringing a single deck to a tournament, right? The win rate of a deck and the win rate of the player are uncoupleable within a tournament, but that actually ends up being almost nice, because then you could just say, okay, all of these people brought this archetype, the average of this archetype's performance was X, right? And it's not a perfect proxy, because if you're trying to balance or understand the game at the highest level, you care not about the average, but about the best level of play, right? But in Netrunner, that's not true. I can bring a Sable deck and it could be the best deck in the format, but if I bring it, it's not going to do very well. But maybe I found some uninteractive linear combo corp that just wins all of its games. And so suddenly, I can be doing fine, or like my Sable win rate, I will tank the Sable win rate, but do very well in the tournament. And if I go 50-50 as Sable, but I go, 100% as Corp, that means something different than if I go 50-50 with Muslihat and 50-50 with the player's Corp. And so there's something complicated about the strength of your opponent being dependent on player skill and your other deck choice that makes it difficult to take win rate at face value. And I think cut conversion was an attempt by Kikai to try and correct for that to some degree, but I think it actually has somewhat similar problems where we're skipping some punchlines if I show that just yet, right? Just getting a runner win rates doesn't necessarily tell you what the strongest stuff is. Like, maybe Seb is the strongest, on just a win rate side, but it could also be that Seb is playing against corps that are generally piloted by people who are worse, because the Seb player is actually playing in a more middle of the table bracket. I don't think that's actually the case. I think it's almost the opposite in this case. But that's just sort of like what's kind of started me down this alley of this calling Sable not a threat and Muslihat the real deal. And I was slightly vindicated when you actually go and look at the World Championship for a claim I did not make publicly in any way that allows me to claim credit, which is that Sable did really well at the 2025 World Championship. I think when we look at the standings, this is like, yeah, there's a lot of things that load fairly poorly, but it's Sable, 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 Baz, Sable, Sable, Sable. No Muslihat in sight, right? The highest Muslihat is a player I have a lot of respect for, D at 21st, but like there are so many Sables that finished above and below them, and it's not like Sable got that much. Like the 2508 ban list, I should know off the top of my head what it did to hurt Criminal. It did nothing to hurt Criminal. What am I talking about? That ban list, I have some, I think there could be, I almost made a whole video about the ban list, but kind of felt like it wasn't fair for me to do so, because they had to make it on a short time frame, in part because of the World Championship to support me, which feels not appropriate to like kind of express frustration with a thing that I helped cause the frustration for. And so there was, it's like this result wasn't surprising to me that Sable was much better than Muesli Hot, but this data, this data doesn't suggest it. And actually, if you even go and look at the, if we, instead of looking at this, we look at the 25-12 meta, we look at paper play, and we restrict it to the 18th of October, which is the only event that happened that day was Worlds. We should get new data loading in. We get 150 and 81 players, so let's just double check to make sure that is what we see, right? No, that's the wrong thing. We want tournament info because stats has different sets of pages. Okay. So we see, 82 and 60. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. Need to wait for this to load a little bit more. And we still actually see, Mercury and Muesli Hot both have higher win rates than Sable. So this to me basically just shows, to some extent, right, that just like win rate can't be the stat that we care about in many senses. And maybe cut conversion is the stat we care about here because, yeah, Sable had an incredible cut conversion and Mercury and Muesli Hot had a pretty mediocre one. Did any of them make the cut? I should know this off the top of my head. This is the thing about being out of practice with Netrunner. I don't have a great memory for where everything is. Also, if someone would just mind saying a little hi in chat to make sure that window's still working, that would be fantastic. Apologies, I just had to reinstall OBS right before the stream went live, so I just want to make sure I don't have things broken. Yeah, so no Mercury's made the top 16, and the highest Mercury was at 33 with Robin, and then the next one's at 60 and 140 and stuff like that. So there's this issue whenever you get low. Thanks, Larea, appreciate it. When you get to these, this is a smaller sample size than an entire season, but like win rate is not giving us the numbers we need, and so runner win rate is predictive stuff. And I actually think I went on a whole side tangent, which I'll show in a minute, but that the Maker's Eye actually has mostly the solution that you kind of care about, which is oddly enough the opposite side win rate. And so you have this graph is like how much did this deck win in Swiss, and how much did the players who brought that deck bring, how well did that other deck do? And so even though Sable only had a 47% win rate, the people that brought Sable on average won more of their Corp games, which means their Sable games were generally going to be against players of a higher tier than the Muesli Hot players, who, even though they won, yes, 47 is slightly worse than 48, right? It's only a 1 point difference, but their opposite side win rate was 10 points worse. And so on average, the average Muesli Hot player was doing much worse. And so on their Corp side, and that doesn't tell us that Muesli Hot is worse. It tells us the player who brought, it tells me at least that the players who brought Muesli Hot either misread the meta and brought bad corps, or were less skilled players. And this is a thing that's pretty difficult to decouple, and also a thing that I don't want to be saying as judgmental. I would describe myself right now as a pretty mediocre player. And I don't think being skilled at competitive Netrunner is the most important thing in being engaged in Netrunner. I think things like the thing that opposite side win rate starts to tell you about, right, is, okay, if I'm up high in both of these quadrants, that probably means my runner deck, my deck was cracked, right? And so something like Hosh is suggested to be here as actually probably the best choice in this data set. It's, not as many games, but a pretty reasonable number, right? Where the Hosh players tended to do about as well as the Sable players and about as well as the Muesli Hot players, but brought better corps, or by the same interpretation, were players that are stronger than the Sable players. And that's kind of interesting. And if we go and look at the Cobra, top 16, you see 1, 2, 3, 4. We actually see fewer hunches than sables. And this is where things get kind of complicated, right? Like, there's not going to be one metric that tells us everything we want to know, but the goal of any stats person, right, is to make a metric that tells us everything we know, or everything we could know. And the Maker's Eye feels like, to me, a pretty solid attempt at it so far. But there's just a lot of variables to think about. I'm going to draw on the screen a thing. I'm going to try and draw a screen on the thing. Let's see if I can get that to work. Oh, did that die when I reinstalled? Oh, that's a bummer. Okay, we're going to do this the old school way then, where I think it's a window capture of paint, which should be somewhere. Oh, I probably need to open up paint for it to capture it. Okay, great. So, what am I thinking? Okay, so in chess, right, you want a probability of who's going to win the match, and it is, oh, I'm going to embarrass myself, 1 over 1 plus e to the negative of some value, and we're just going to call this x. And this function has this, the negative logit, it's the, I should know the actual name for this. It's like the logit function is the name I know it by. And when you plot this function, so if we look at x, and we'll say p on this axis, oh, that's probably not where I want to put the p, because we're just going to do this on this single axis here, right? Okay, so when x is, oop, that's the wrong thing. When x is 1, right? Oop, that's actually not what I want either, probably. Looks weird. Okay. When x is 1, we have 1 over 1 plus e to the minus 1. Oh, sorry, that's not what I want. When x is, this is why. Okay. Lol, lol, lol. Okay, we're gonna do this, and this, and then we're gonna do, we want this guy. Okay. So now we're going to do math correctly, right? 1 over 1 plus e to the 0. E to the 0 is 1 because anything is 0 power, so we have 1 over 2. So our probability is a half. And so that's cool. And now we want to think about what happens as our probability gets quite large. So if x is infinity, then we have 1 over 1 plus e to the negative infinity. E to the negative infinity is e to the negative infinity approaches 0. And a formal math person will probably be mad at me, but we'll call this, we'll hand wave this quickly rather than do a full math lecture because I can't do that. And so then this becomes 1 over 1. So our probability is 1 when x goes to infinity. And I'm just going to quickly say, and when x goes to negative infinity, instead of being 1 over 1 plus e to the 0, we get 1 over e to the infinity, which hopefully we can all agree is a very large number. So this becomes 1 over such a large number that is effectively 0 probability. And then the neat thing is that if you actually plot this function out, it's basically flat, but forms an exponential curve from here to here. So values close to 0 start mattering a lot, but once you get far enough away, you get quite solid diminishing returns, and then the opposite thing happens on the other side. And so you get this S-shaped logistic curve. And so if you know chess ELO, that's just what the ELO function does, is it takes, get rid of this panel. I can't, okay. The chess does some fancy math, but basically the idea is that you take, I'm going to call it S1, so the strength of player 1, minus the strength of player 2, and this is equal to your x. And so the nice thing about this is you can take two players, and all you know about them is their elo, and then you can get the probability of S1 winning the match. And so if S1 is much bigger than S2, that's this case where we're approaching infinity, where x is approaching infinity and negative x is approaching 0, and so the probability becomes very high that player 1 will win. If player 2 is much stronger than player 1, you get the opposite case. And if they're about the same strength, you say the probability is about 50-50. And this is great. And this, in theory, is the tool I want to use to start approaching, trying to predict the inherent strength of netrunner identities. Because the idea is, I could take, let's say we have a list of all of the matches in the tournament, right? We have M1, M2, M3, ... And then we have, we'll call it Corp 1, Corp 2, ... Runner 1, Runner 2, ... and then we'll have a, we'll call this win sub C. And the idea of what I wanted to do is say, okay, if match 1 it was this Corp, this Runner, and the Corp 1. And then this Corp didn't play, this Runner didn't play, etc., etc. And then you can say, okay, I will now, in the second matchup, it was this Corp against this Runner, and the Corp lost. And then you can say, oh, it's going to be this guy against this guy against this guy again, and this time the Runner won, right? And what you can do is you can make this large matrix of Corp and Runner results, and then you can actually just fit in a pretty, not super complicated, but more complicated than I can explain trivially, function that says, okay, if I'm given Corp 1 and Runner 1, predict the result of who's going to win using this logistic equation. And then you can back calculate what the strength of each of these are. And so I did that. And let's see if I can get that code up. I made this way too complicated, and then it kind of didn't work for reasons that I hopefully will be interesting. Let's see if I can get this to show up. I cannot. Okay, cool. Let's try that now, and I don't know. Oop. So, I think all this stuff is doable with public info, but I did use some data that's not public here, because I ended up getting access to all of the deck lists as well, which is a thing that we do want to make available at some point, but we don't actually want to do it this year because we did not make that a clear criteria. So we'll have some fun things to talk about. Oh, actually, did I only do the fun things here? It looks like I may have. Okay. So what did I do to actually make this work? This is what I mean about, like, it was too difficult to crude val. No, it was this. I will, yeah, this is what I want. Shoot. Did I leave myself a useful readme? I did not. Okay. Apologies. This is the thing I should have done ahead of time. I ran out of time for. Does that what I want? No, not really. It probably does, but I just need to filter. Okay. Oh, no, it doesn't have what I want. Okay. Cancel. These don't work. Okay. Does this have code that runs at the bottom? It does not. No. What did I do? Oh, shoot. Ah, here we are. I think this is what I want. Oh no, this is going to get mad at me because I'm not in the environment. It looks like it might be doing that for me anyway. No. Okay. That is a bummer. I thought this was running, and it's not. Poop. Why are you not happy with me? Let's try this. I think I did that in the wrong flag. Yeah. Man. Oh, do I just run this file and get what I want? Yeah, I do. Okay. All right. Okay, so what did I do here? So the thing that I realized when the first time I ran this was that if you go and actually go back and look at the world's data, which I will go and pull back up on here. Oh shoot, everything is going badly. Cause my scene switcher thing is broken. And now I can't find where I want to be. Oh, it's just there. Okay, great. And we don't need paint anymore, right? So like everything's fine and normal, and then you see, oh, a Lat made it through. That's not too bad. Oh, a Barry Baz made it through. I wonder how many Bazes there are in the whole tournament, because Baz is not a particularly popular ID, right? And when this loads, we're going to see there was like less than 10 Bazes at this World Championship with 360 people. That means that Baz's performance is almost entirely tied to Alpi's performance, which is not great from a trying to get signal to noise. And the thing that actually killed me was that Az McCaffrey was consistently showing up as one of the strongest IDs in the entire set. Az McCaffrey was so strong because only one person brought Az, and they did quite well with Az. They didn't win the whole event, they didn't make the top 16, but on average, Az did very, very well. And it's hard to do much better than, like, 71st means that Az finished in the top quarter of all players, or all IDs. And on average, basically no IDs did this. And so when predicting, and also Az won 5 of the 7 games it played, or somewhere, I don't know if actually, yeah, I think it has to have played at least that many games to get 24 points. Yeah, I think you have to have played. Was 7? Yeah, because 24 was the cutoff. So I think. Oh yeah, and I dropped everyone who didn't make it, I want to say. Yeah, so Az was being a real problem with dataset, and so what I decided to do was, oh, I should also include the player. And so actually, if you would go back to this paint setup, this ends up being pretty easy to modify, right? Because right now what this equation was doing was 1 over 1 plus e to the negative of this term, and we had the corp strength minus the runner strength. And what we can instead change this equation to be is now it's going to be, we'll pick green, it's going to be corp 1 plus player corp minus runner plus the player's runner score. And when I say PR, I actually am just referring to which person that is. Every person only had a single score, and so you would just add to this matrix player 1 player 2 and then this would become your exponent in the 1 over 1 to the e minus whatever, and you can fit this equation just as well. The problem started to one of the problems was basically this now becomes extremely overfit data, right? Because we have about, I think it was around 2,000 matches in the data set. 2083, I had to throw some matches out for various reasons. But you have about 2,000 matches in the data set. You have 300 player variables, and then about another 40 ID variables. This means that you only have about 2 to 3 observations per thing you are trying to fit. And that's just very bad in terms of like doing good statistics. I think there's probably some ways, if I actually had taken real statistics and could explore this more, to figure this one out. But it ended up being a really difficult problem to solve. And I think ultimately one of the challenges that Netrunner has is that we don't have that many games played. And so it's just not going to be a thing that we can easily access is the true definitive numerical answers to a lot of things. And so I tried to do some, like, I'm like cutting to a bunch of punchlines, right? Where it's, I have a matrix of player skill. I actually am not that interested in sharing it. If you want to, like, you can, I've shown you everything I've done to do it. You could do it yourself at this point. I'm not in the interest of trying to, I just want to make sure I'm not going to actually scroll things. Great. Like, I'm not in the interest of trying to do that stuff. Yeah, so loosely, that's basically what this approach is doing. So Lucille is saying, I think you want to try a true multiplayer MM algorithm to generate a model of skill treating ID and players teammates, something like true skill. And so ideally I would have found, like, the thing I would have liked to have done was find a library that implemented true skill in a way that I could quickly interface with, and I'm sure it's out there. I spent probably an hour looking for something and trying to make it work and wasn't happy with the results. What I'm actually doing is somewhat equivalent, because the thing let's do we'll do a new, and we won't save this. So true skill is actually doing the same thing behind the scene, or not the same thing. The big thing that like true skill tends to add, and a lot of the, so like chess just does, this simple version of this thing, the logic, and then you just have X is a linear combination. A lot of what the things will do is they will say X, and then they'll also add a sigma, I should know this, a sigma variable that represents the uncertainty in each player's skill. And then you update this uncertainty over time, and so a player, has both an ELO, and then they'll have a plus or minus, and then true skill tries to handle, like, okay, this will be 1400 plus or minus 100, might be someone's starting rating, kind of thing. And then true skill will try and actually this is a thing, like, I couldn't find a lot of good literature on, though I'm sure it's out there, of saying, okay, we're going to try and estimate each person's contribution. And I'm sure there is a reasonable way to do that, but in practice, like, this linear combination of terms is kind of what they're all doing under the hood. Right? They're just combining a bunch of terms and generally putting them in some logistic equation. The thing that a lot of the downfall of ELO systems and actually true skill is they are iterative. So you do match one, and then you update your table of everyone. So the way that a lot of these things work is everyone comes in with an assumed skill, say this 1400 plus or minus some CV, some uncertainty, and then you go and do an update after each match. And then you resolve match one, you update everyone's involved, then you go to match two, and now you have some players that have a new thing. Like you both. The way that these work is like, okay, after the first match, maybe you lost, so your skill is now 1360, and your uncertainty is maybe now 90. The algorithm is now more confident both in your true skill and your or has some sense of saying you're less skilled than it thought you were, and is more certain about that skill. And it does this iteratively, so you do match 1, then 2, then 3, etc. The thing I was doing was actually trying to solve the minimum for the entire matrix simultaneously. This is something you can only do post hoc. You can't do it running, and so it works fine and it does a decent job of fitting. I don't actually think that probably there's something to be gained from adding an uncertainty term. I did not feel like it was doing enough work for me. And at some point, I've thought about approaches of trying to be like, okay, what if I just tell it, like, the player contributes this percentage and the deck contributes this percentage to try and deal with this weighting problem. And I don't feel like I had a good way to do that with some math. Oh, I've been drawing and not displaying what I'm drawing. Oh, Oop. And all of you, it's all of your fault that none of you said anything. Okay. So, yeah, true skill, from my understanding, and I'm happy to be wrong, is basically implementing a slightly, it is just doing the XYZ, adding skill and uncertainty, and then figuring out some way to attribute win results to those different things, and probably reweighting. And probably that reweighting is the thing I would want to try and do, but it did not feel like it was worth it relative to this approach, which is actually extendable, pretty simple, all things considered, and has the advantage of, like, oh, because I have a fixed complete data set, I can run this once and get a great result and kind of tweak with things from there. It didn't work, so maybe that should have been a thing, but, like, it didn't work, and I kind of had to give up. And John, I do actually want to get to your thing about analyzing card combos. It's a thing that I was hoping to do with this, and just haven't really done, but I want to show what I do have. Anyway, I did kind of get out something through basically trying to reduce the other thing that I intended to do, and the reason there's actually a whole bunch of stuff, like, there's actually a whole database that's being, like, I'm running, I think, I'm running on a Postgres database, I think, that actually has basically every match or every tournament from Cobra and Aesop's tables loaded into it, with the idea that the problem with this, so, like, I actually don't think the problem here is with my mathematical approach. I think the problem is the number of data points I have, right? Because as I was saying, it's like, I have 2,000 matches, right? And I have, 40 IDs, 360 players. And this just isn't enough data, right? If I combine this, it is 5 data point, like, it's a 5-to-1 of observations. Apologies to variables, right? And, like, the fact that this has high signal to noise, or that my data is fairly noisy, makes sense. And I think there's ways to adjust for this. The thing I was hoping to do was just name fix everyone. Turns out Netrunner players don't enter their name the same way twice. We don't have a universal ID system, and player registration on Always Be Running or player claims on Always Be Running are so intermittent as to basically not be worth my time trying to do that. I did at one point consider trying to manually curate and align names. The problem being, you have a John and a John, and oh, thank you. Yep, I was wrong again. So I did actually try and be like, okay, so obviously this is a data thing problem, and if I go, I don't think I have my database viewer still. Do I still have my database viewer installed? Let's see if I actually have this database saved where it's supposed to be. I don't think it is, because I'm... Oh, no, it is there. Oh, fantastic. Okay. Now I just have to find where this code is. Oh, not the relative path. What was I doing? Copy path. Fudge. Okay, if I go to here, sorry, I'm doing something on the other monitor. I'll pull something in. Okay, browse data, and then we just look at player. So like, and I will actually go in. I have to go and grab this window. I can't just drag it to the other thing. Okay, right. So, oh, no, I actually deleted all the data, so I can't even show this. I can't show the thing I want to show. Never mind. Lol. Okay. Yeah, I downloaded all of the data from both Cobra and Always Be Running, and then started trying to do player mapping. And then I was like, okay, well, this doesn't work because I have a Dan D and a Dan D, and I'm pretty sure these are different Dan Ds, because there's a lot of Dans. Let me see if I can try and make a network, and to try and do a network analysis and say, like, okay, this Dan played against these 5 people, but not these 5 people that played against this Dan, and so I can make a guess that those are actually different Dans. Network players travel too much and don't play in enough tournaments for me to actually make that work. So I gave up on that because my time was more valuable. So yeah, it's like a thing where like I was like, oh, I know a lot of network players, I can figure this out, and it's just didn't work. So this is a data problem. One day, actually, I think if we can get everyone to register, the thing I would love to do is to, for next season, have people have to have, basically require people to register. I'm sorry, I'd say Jeff as a data scientist, not Jeff in any official capacity, would love it for long term for players playing in competitive events to have to register via a Netrunner DB account, and if you you would have to always use that same account so that we could actually go and do this data decoupling. There are many good reasons we don't start with that. Like, I'm not going to say that that's a thing that OP is going to push for. I want to make that very, very clear. But, like, from a data scientist perspective, the fact that the same person has multiple IDs was really frustrating. And even when I had data that was everyone, like, I was like, oh, great, like, Sokka will be easy, right? I could get all of Sokka as one thing. It's like, oh, Sokka only used the same name in 2 tournaments. Like, he had I think I had 5 different instances of Sokka across like 8 tournaments he played, and I was just like, oh no, this is going to be a pain, right? And so, like, trying to find who the best player was, or the best, like, it was just an amount of work that I couldn't actually handle. So that's why I'm actually going back to the bottom of worlds, and why I'm not super happy with the data, but I wanted to do some playing around. And then I'm actually going to jump, after I talk about this, to what I think is, to me, the more correct way to think about deck strength. But anyway, if you plug everything into that logistic regression model, if you really want to try and do this yourself, I was using the logistic regressor from sklearn. So it is doing some level of machine learning. It is not, I'm running it on my local computer. It is in fact a linear and time algorithm. It does not resemble large language models in any sense, but it is a machine learning based technique to a degree, or it's a linear algebra based technique, right? So this is like saying, okay, as was the best, like as, Essa, Mercury, like have high coefficients, which means if you told me, basically what this is saying is like, oh, if you tell me that the player that as is being played it is actually a large influencer on whether or not that match is going to be won. And that's interesting, but not the question that we care about, right? This is actually just a recapitulation of win rate with some exceptions, right? It is actually quite close to just recapitulating win rate, though. So I tried to do some stuff where I would calculate a runner adjusted win value or the average of the runner players of the player strength of that runner or of their corp. And the thing I found, oh, okay. Wait, what did I shoot? I thought I had clearer names for this. Okay. Yeah. I think this is the... Okay. So the thing that I found that was... let me go and... where am I? Aggregate... Sort values by... okay, I don't want this. I want the runner player strength. What I ended up finding I liked as corp player strength. Okay, so let me actually slow down and talk about the actual math I did here, because I think this is probably the thing that I think is most interesting, but the thing I have the least kind of statistical knowledge of. Okay, so where do we go here? We extract the coefficients, and now we start doing stuff. We get the player skill, we get the runner and corp identity skills. Okay, so then what I do, it's been a long time since I've looked at this code. This is just exponential corp strength equals the exponential corp strength, one adjusted win rate value. Oh, does this not have what I want? Okay, runner, group by runner identity, corp player strength. Okay, right. So I do a bunch of stuff that I actually end up not caring about. So I'm going to rerun this code quickly. So what I basically do, what ended up being the thing that was the most useful to me was, right, I compute, I'm going to go back to here, right? I do the thing where I do, right, so I get, corp strength, and then player 1 strength, minus runner strength, minus player 2. The reason I'm putting these as minuses is this lets me have positive numbers actually be the good value for all cases, right? And so what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, for every corp, I want to get the average of their opponent runner's strength. Just get the average of this value. With the idea being, you don't have, these are your, well, this is the thing that I know I cannot quite hit with the data I have, because this data is very noisy. I have some things that have very low number of corp data, like I have some corps with very low number of values, or some runners with a very low n number of values in terms of their strength. But for every player, I have basically the same amount of data. It's not actually true, but it's close to true. And so the model has a somewhat... can I just see... No, I can't see the thing I want here, which is annoying. Okay. There's some... I have it... Basically, there's some, roughly belt... So, if I look at... that's not a nice bell curve, right? Player skill was distributed by this method in a somewhat bell curve-like fashion. I didn't do true statistical analysis to see if it was a true bell curve, but that's what this should do, and what it almost is forced to do by the tournament Swiss system. And so then what I can say is, okay, if you were playing Corp, if I was playing Alco, where on this distribution did my average opponent's skill end up? And so this is doing... Earlier I was talking about... oh goodness, apologies, we're going to do some rapid flipping around, right? So we have this idea of opposite side win rate. And in this case, this is saying, okay, as Hosh, if I brought Hosh, how well did my Corp do? But that's not the thing I think is actually the meaningful data point necessarily. I actually think that this might be the correct approach, which is we say, not how well did the Corp that I brought as Hosh do, but how well did the Corps I played against do, or how highly were they rated? And the thing that this did, that I spent way too long hunting in my Quixotic quest, is it told me that Sable was better than Muesli Hot in the world's data set. Yeah, John. I am trying to so there's one way to look at this where I'm trying to figure out how strong was a player that, did the player outperform their decks? How well did a particular player do? I will say this was in part to Glaze analyze Chris, who went undefeated in Swiss and then lost 2 in the cut and gets like a 9th place or something, or not even 9th place, like a 12th place finish because of that. And like, if you look at the metrics this way, which is a more like ELO focused ways, sorry, I will get to your comment in a second, Lucille. If you look at it as like an ELO fit where every match is equally valuable, like, oh, analyze Chris, my good friend who I literally was staying in Airbnb with, has one of the best top 3 performances in the entire event, kind of thing. So, lucky for Chris that the data shakes out that way. That wasn't really the objective. The objective actually was to try and start figuring out this ID strength. So Lucille, the thing that is different, so yes, this has a lot of similarities with strength of schedule. The difference being, you are also correcting for some amount of your own player skill and the strength. Like, this does not treat every win equally in terms of how it contributes to your ranking. Though maybe I don't know that chart you're talking about, and I should look at that before I go and make large claims. Let's take a look at what you're saying is there. JNet, so this is just reinventing strength of schedule. Let's go and see. So I need to go and actually look at the individual thing, right? Because what I'm talking about here, opposite side win rate is not really what I want. And then strength of schedule, not, I think, the thing I particularly want. Maybe I could do that here, but it's like so this is, yeah, opposite side win rate, strength of schedule, and then normalize strength of schedule. Is this what we're talking about? Like, this is for like an individual corp, I guess. On the meta-analysis page, all of the dots. Maybe I'll hold here because I think this is what you're talking about. So, like, a thing to me that, like, yes and no, right? Like, it probably does recreate this and make, like, I'm not sure, yeah, from normalized back to regular SOS. So, I don't know what's going on with this axis, because that's definitely not an infinite strength of schedule, or it shouldn't be, right? So maybe that's what this is doing. I'd have to look at more of these. If instead of looking at Leo, I look at like Alco, right? So I think there's something about. Okay, so let's say I look at this, right? 1.994. Going back at Leo. So, like, a thing that... So, right, what we're then... If this is directly normal, like, if this is the same thing, we're saying, okay, the average of this versus the average of this is the thing I'm comparing to try and get the strength of the IDs. And that might be... I would not actually be shocked if this is what I'm recreating. I know it's not exactly what I'm recreating, because I'm not I'm calculating things. An assumption in strength of schedule is that every weight is equally valuable, and that's not quite true in this setup that I'm doing. Now, whether that's justified or not with the amount of data I have, I'm not sure it is. Like, I'm not going to claim I have the right stuff. I also don't think anyone's looked at... Yeah, it should definitely correlate, and it probably is the, like, million miles faster way to get to the same idea. Yeah. So... This is also partly why I actually wanted to do a stream about this, is because I knew I was going about this in a bad way, and I wanted to get people to help me figure out other approaches on this. So anyway, right, we still see, like, oh yeah, Moosely Hot wins less than Sable, or about the same as Sable does, but by the strength of their average opponent, you actually get a pretty pronounced difference. So that to me felt like, oh, actually, you know what? Let's go and look at what's the fastest way to do this? Can I just actually do this quickly? Let me see if I have this in here. Okay, I don't, unfortunately. But probably what I can do as some future work is just go and calculate the average of this. I'll take a look at that, Lucille. I will say my skepticism is I have not seen people proposing that as a tournament ranking or rating system very much, which just has me a bit skeptical that it's a mathematically sound approach, whereas the thing I'm taking is actually a pretty standard technique for estimating player skill in tournaments. But I'll definitely try and give that a look. I don't know enough about it to be good about it. Anyway, let me actually switch to the code stuff I was looking at. So we'll just go and pull this up, right? So, like, you know, this told me the answers I wanted, which is why I kind of stopped there and yeah, I would not start with a graph theory solution to this for a variety of reasons, I think, Lucille. Maybe it's correct, but I would be surprised if it was the... it's not, to my knowledge, how anyone does a rating system. So that does put me a little bit on edge there. But I think there's also a version of the... So, yeah, anyway. Yeah, this to me was like, okay, cool. This gives me, like, it's not a perfect sorting. It still does stuff I don't expect. Like, oh, actually, you know, Sable is like one of your, it's not your top choice, but it's it's in your top couple of choices, and you can start making arguments, statistical stuff and things. Um, but you know, you see that Sable is rated like actually fairly higher than Brutally Hot, despite having a pretty similar win rate. I tried to make this adjusted win rate metric to like calculate the value of the wins that the ID was associated with, and I think that might be an ultimate way to try and get down to a single metric to rule them all. But it's not there yet. And even if it is a single metric to rule them all, it is much too complicated to like explain it. It's definitely arbitrary right now. Anyway, the thing I wanted to do. So I played around with some U maps again, which is have all of the decks and all of the cards and start mapping some things in. And let's see if I can make this bigger. No, I cannot easily, I think. I don't care about you. And so once again, like, let's see if I can... What's going on here? I'm trying to remember. I feel like I had some exciting stories to say out of this, but I don't remember. I will have some dig-ins here. Oh, so the thing I was trying to do here, I estimate the player's strengths, and then what I was trying to do was find, I will say, like, did not run very well. Trying to, like, actually go and find, like, okay, if I zoom in on, like if I just zoom in on the Hoshikos, right? We have a couple of different archetypes, and we can also now, in addition to like this UMAP, which is an arbitrary, well, not arbitrary, but, well, no, I will say a somewhat arbitrary separation in space that correlates to the card choices in players' decks. Well, in theory, I now also know how each of these decks did, and I can start to try and figure out what cards were in certain clusters and are correlated with having done well. And that actually is probably an interesting thing for people to care about, right? Is, oh, these were the cards that differentiated these two groups in a way that created win percentage for the group that did this rather than that. I got kind of stuck here, and like life got away from me. And like this is not a field I have a ton of knowledge in, so it's something I'm going to be trying to look at more later. When I have time, but who knows when that's going to be. So like that's kind of a way to think about this and why I've been trying to think about like best deck kind of stuff. Another thing I was thinking about or was reminded about when I started to look at just some other random YouTube content for other card games, because I like to see what other people are doing in the space, right? Is best deck can mean multiple things, right? And I think a thing that people tend to say in Netrunner is that the best deck is a deck that should just have a high win rate across the board. And I think, honestly, that works well in Netrunner because we're a pretty small game. We don't run that many events. And the level of optimization, I would argue people tends to feel the level of uncertainty in what the meta is going to look like is quite high. But I could, and so my hypothesis here, right, is, let me get out my old friend Paint, right? So we have, we'll say like, oh, people are just like, yep, Scrobs is greater than every other deck, right? So Scrobs is better than Leo, which is maybe about the same as Epiphany. I don't actually know where people stand on all these decks right now, right? But let's just say, like, and these are greater than Alco, which, you know, who knows? Maybe that's true. This is not the actual state, right? And so what downrunner players basically say is like, okay, if you are good, you will be playing Scrobs. If Scrobs doesn't work, you are necessarily sacrificing EV to take Elio or Epiphany. And if you don't like those, you're necessarily sacrificing expected wins by taking Alco, right? And then you do the same thing for the runner side. And in other games, people will tend, you know, they still will have this analysis, but then they'll also say like, oh, because we can do this, we'll say, okay, Scrobs has good matchups into Leo and Alco, with a bad matchup into Epiphany. And so if I'm expecting everyone to be on Scrobs, I'll take Epiphany. And Netrunner is more complicated because you have 2 decks, and so your sizes gets different. And what the Snare Bears did, and like a thing that I think we've talked about in the past, so I don't think I'm not going to go further than this sheet, right? But is you get this idea of, and this is actually, no, I know I can share the sheet because we talked about it in the video that I didn't release about our world's look back and prep and things like that, right? Is you take both what percent of the field you think the thing is going to be, and then what you think its win rate is in a given matchup. And then you get a weighted win rate. And you get a weighted win rate. And so then you can say, okay, for this particular tournament, if the meta looks this way, this is the best thing for me to bring. So Doll's Criminal was the best thing in this metric, and Epiphany was the best thing on this by this metric. And so, and then I think, you know, we did color coding for people putting in the percentages and claiming things. And the idea was like, oh, in theory, we could start filling this out with data. This was a lot of vibes. I would not take these numbers at face value. But actually, to me, when I think about best deck, I think, if the best deck conversation is ever as simple as this, where there is just a deck, and then you are always sacrificing equity by bringing something else, that is actually, to me, a sign that the SBT should probably be taking it. Or a probable sign that SBT action is warranted, because there's not interesting decisions. But I think most of the time, even if you can look at something like, oh, we felt like scoring Alco was, we'll say kill Alco. Let's find a matchup that was like, I mean, we thought this was like a huge runner meta, so that's why everything looks runner favored here, right? So like we say, like, okay, kill, you know, let's say we felt like Reg Sable was the best deck, right? Well, this would actually tell me, okay, if we think that like everyone should be playing Sable, oh, it doesn't have a good matchup to RH, so I could take something to start exploiting that. But then conversely, oh, if I play Doll's Sable, I get to exploit the RH matchup. And that's when you start getting, I think, interesting tournament dynamics. And the bigger this like matrix is, the better for making interesting things, and the harder it becomes to define the best. Even if something is the most popular and the strong, like, what does strongest mean, right? You could say, oh, it has the highest average unweighted win rate. Maybe that's the thing you care about. Maybe it's the thing that's most popular and did well. I think this is the thing that like has kind of been a stumbling block for me, is like, you know, I went on this rant because of basically this line, which I feel like was like just almost comically incorrect. I think I feel pretty confident saying that this is somewhat comically incorrect, and like doing this the way that this analysis is done, I don't think stands up to much rigor. But arguably, you know, as I say that, I'm like, well, I didn't go and actually look at this same data set. I wouldn't look at this data set and say that like Sable isn't a threat. I would say Sable and Moosely Hot probably performed pretty similarly to me. And my hunch is that in the hands of good players, Sable outperformed, but Sable was also played by a lot of people who did worse on average than Moosely Hot, and you have that kind of weighting issue. And for Worlds, I actually think the data very much shows that. And let's see if we can look at... Okay, so if we look at opposite side win rate for Sable... No, if you look at strength of schedule for Sable versus... I wish I could look at Sable and Muesli Hot at the same time here. Sorry. Oh, wait, I should be able to, right? If I can do... I can't do comma Sable. That's unfortunate. To be fair, strongest is a matter of expected value. The strongest is not a guarantee of a win because the general rock, paper, scissors of card games. That's maybe a fair way to say it, John. I think it's like having a deck be the strongest because it has a large... So it's like a common way that people think about a strongest deck is if I brought this deck and I don't know anything about... Maybe actually this is a way to think about it. Okay, there's one version of the strongest deck, which is if I know nothing about what my opponent can be bringing, this is the deck I think will give me the most value, right? The highest expected, the highest likelihood to win. What makes a deck, what then makes a metagame interesting is we actually do know that that deck in theory exists, and then we get to play around that deck, and around that deck's good and bad matchups, and around players' good and bad skills, and high and difficult skills. And so maybe that is the actually concise way to put that, is the blind to the meta strongest deck versus meta-aware strongest deck. And I think there are times when, like, I actually couldn't tell you, like, I don't know what the strongest deck was at Worlds, Corp or Runner side. I think there are multiple arguments. Like, you know, I think there's a decent argument that right now Scrobs is really, really strong, at least from what I hear from other people, and the little bit I brought to my casual game night. So you could argue, oh, Scrobs was the best deck at Worlds because it's the one that stuck around post-Worlds. I don't know that I completely buy that. I think a lot of things changed between, like, the ban list actually I think made things much better for Scrobs than not, than prior to Worlds, and it also didn't do particularly well at Worlds. Now you could make the argument, hey, Zomsdraft won, so Hoshiko, you know, Zomsdraft's Hoshiko list and Epiphany list are the best decks. And I think there's a reasonable like, that's not a claim I think I would fully stand behind, but I also don't think it's an unfair claim to make. Like, to me, it's like, okay, well, now we could look at, like, highest win rates, but I don't think win rates, like, I think there's clearly a problem in the win rate data. And maybe you need to, maybe actually the average of strength of schedule is the right way to talk about it. And that will give us all the answers. Like, I don't know, to me, there's not a clear best deck out of Worlds, and I don't think there's a single best way to know what the best deck is from Worlds. I try to attack it with a couple of numerical things, and kind of was unhappy with all of my answers. Yeah, I don't know that I have a better conclusion than that to end on. So, yeah, I think that's going to just about wrap it up for me. Hi, Eric. Apologies that you arrived just in time for me to end the stream. I would say there is about a 1% chance I can make it on Sunday. Unfortunately, I have other travel going on this weekend. And actually, no, yeah, I think it's actually a 0% chance I can make it on Sunday, unfortunately. Sorry, Eric. Just have other things going on. So, anyways, thank you all for tuning into my rambling. Thanks for Lucille and the rest. Honestly, like, everyone in the chat, I really appreciate it. You've been helping me crystallize some thoughts. I don't know if I'll actually end up making a video about it. This might be my video about it. I just don't know if I have time. Maybe one day I'll make a video about all of the NSG work I've been doing behind the scenes, because there's been a lot of it, and that's been keeping me busy. Being a dad has kept me busy. Changing jobs has kept me busy. It's been a wild year. John, but like in fighting games, the higher the variance, the more games they play. Is there a chance that there are not enough games played at Worlds? I would struggle to say that we are... Netrunner plays more games... Well, that is almost a whole other like 20-minute rant, I think. So I think probably we don't. I would say we probably do actually play a fairly appropriate amount of games of Netrunner in an individual tournament. Like, I actually think playing more and more games has some pretty severe diminishing returns. And, like, while I could be like, oh yeah, I think Chris probably was not the 13th best player in this top 16, it's not that big of a, like, 13th versus 4th or 5th, like, I'm not, again, like, I don't want to diminish these rankings. These rankings do have a meaning. To me, like, top 16, top 32 of a 360 person room is good, and then having some variance in there, having people show up with unexpected things is pretty cool. To find like mathematically correct statistical things all the time, yeah, we don't do enough Netrunner for that. But the amount of Netrunner we have, like, tournaments' goal is not solely to get the best statistical answer. It's also like it is to also be an experience that people there want to do, and variance is actually an intrinsic part of why you want things to happen. But yeah, I think I will actually wrap it up there. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I might do more of these sort of, here's a video idea that I don't have time to turn into a proper video streams, because I have at least another video idea that I want to do in the back burner here. Yeah, if people like this, please let me know in the comments. And otherwise, I will see you all when I see you. I'll stop making promises about videos. So thanks everyone. Have a good night.